Rest and creating space. Eddie Jaku was a Holocaust and Auschwitz prison camp survivor. He told his story in a wonderful book, The Happiest Man on Earth. His book was thoughtfully written and certainly goes into the library for resiliency training. There are many valuable lessons from his story. Jaku was born in Germany and declared that he was German first, German second, and Jewish third. This made the Nazi atrocities that he and his family suffered very disturbing. He could not believe Germans from the country he loved would treat him and his family this way. He was forced to stop going to school at the age of 13. His father procured a new identity for him, and he attended a school 9 hours from his family under a false identity. At age 18, he returned to his German home, and the Nazi police were waiting for him. His faithful dog was killed in front of him, and he was beaten severely and taken to his first prison camp. After escaping his imprisonment for being Jewish, he was arrested for being German twice and imprisoned by Belgian and French police. Finally, after all that, he was again imprisoned by the Germans at Auschwitz. He and his family arrived at Auschwitz together, and his mother and father were killed as soon as they arrived. Jaku was forced to work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Most days he marched for hours to and from work. In many of his jobs, he wore a sign around his neck that stated if he failed in his task or allowed a machine to stop running, he was to be shot immediately. The people in the camp were treated horrifically, as is well documented. They had poor nutrition, poor housing, and inadequate clothing in frigid temperatures. They were forced to sleep naked in freezing temperatures so that the prisoners would not escape. The beds allowed 10 men to a row. It was vital to wake throughout the night to rotate positions, because if you were on the outside of the row all night, you would freeze to death, literally. After a failed attempt to escape, Jaku needed help getting a bullet out of his leg. He asked a Jewish prisoner he knew was a doctor to help him. The doctor met him privately and removed the bullet from his leg with a butter knife. He then advised Jaku to keep it sanitized with saliva, and the leg healed. I told you he was kind of resilient. Jaku said the doctor gave him advice that saved his life. He told Jaku to rest whenever he could. He told him to lie down. The doctor told Jaku that all the others would be looking for food or clothing or trying to find their family, but he should lie down. He told him that 1 hour of rest equaled 2 days of survival. Jaku escaped from Auschwitz at the end of the war, barely avoiding extermination in the death marches. He was so sick from typhoid and dysentery that the doctors in the hospital gave him a 30% chance of surviving. Jaku went on to live to the age of 101. Approximately 1.3 million people were sent to Auschwitz. 85% of them were murdered at the facility. Many died after escaping, during, and after the war. The doctor's recommendation for Jaku to rest leaps from the story for all of us to hear. Time for recovery is essential. Additionally, it speaks to the idea of providing space for the body and mind, space for the good things and thoughts to surface and gain traction. In his wonderful book, The Creative Act, Rick Rubin describes how the best way to hear or see what is hard to define is to not try. He discourages attempts of analysis or prediction. He suggests creating a space that allows it to come in. Jaku created space by lying down. He did what the doctor recommended and nothing else. Rubin suggests that the universe is constantly supplying information and ideas, and that they will only land with us if we create space. When we free up sufficient space, he says our minds function as a vacuum. When you deliberately rest, as Jaku did, you create space for recovery. When you deliberately rest physically and or mentally, you create a vacuum for good things. In a TED Talk in 2019, before he passed, Jaku talked about young people today and how they were always commenting on how they were running here and running there. Jaku questioned this, saying, "I don't know where they're going." At 100 years of age, Jaku seemed to appreciate the idea of rest and creating space even more. One of my least favorite words, especially around the Institute, is busy. I have for a long time found it undesirable, and a year ago, I heard a Zen reference for the definition of the word busy. It stated, busy means your heart is full. This perspective of the word busy and others suggests there isn't room for any more. No room for others or good things. Jaku doesn't know where people are running. Why would you ever want to be busy or say you are busy? Are you getting enough rest? Sleep is what we first think of when considering rest. And while your sleep is very important, rest achieved in other ways may have much more relevance and potency. The rest between workouts, the rest between sets, the rest between important presentations or projects, the rest between any stressful event and your next step. What is your survival equation? What is your thriving equation? What does 1 hour of rest mean for you? What does 20 minutes of reading or 3 minutes of juggling or coloring equal? Do you have space in your day? Do you have space in your mind? Do you have space in your heart?